really tough and they're really rough and nothing's working, but there's something inside of you that says, I just have to follow that because you don't know who you're going to be.
Welcome to the Binge on Self-Love podcast. My name is Anna, but you can call me Anshi, and thank you so much for tuning in. Binge on Self-Love podcast is about navigating binge eating disorder struggles, disordered eating, and negative body image. Although I share my personal experience with having a negative body image, eating disorders, and I do uncover bits of my personal story, this podcast is not as much about me as it is about you. Beautiful human beings who struggle, who fight, who grow, and who evolve every single day. This podcast is for anyone who wants to feel supported on their recovery journey and simply for anyone who's trying to improve their relationship with themselves. I believe together we can turn something so negative, such as binge eating, into something more positive and hopefully go from binging on food and self-hatred to binging on self-love. Subscribe to the Binge on Self-Love podcast on your favorite platform and tune in every Tuesday for a new episode.
But there's something inside of you that says, I just have to follow that because you don't know who you're going to be.
Disclaimer: Binge on Self-Love podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It doesn't provide professional medical advice and it is not a substitute for diagnosis or treatment. In this podcast, we cover the topic of eating disorders, so if you find this topic triggering, it may be better for you not to listen to this podcast. Always make sure to put your mental health first. Hello everyone, welcome to the Binge on Self-Love podcast. My name is Anna, but you can call me Anshi, and thank you for tuning in. In case you're new here, I am Anshi. I'm a host of this podcast. I am 28, and I've struggled with eating disorders for nearly 10 years. Currently, I am trying to improve the relationship I have with myself, and among other things, I am doing this podcast to 1, share my journey, and 2, to encourage people out there who might be going through something similar that recovery is possible, and most importantly, that recovery is worth it. If you will enjoy today's episode, feel free to subscribe to the Binge on Self-Love podcast on the platform where you're listening right now so you won't miss any future episodes. And now, without further ado, let's get into today's episode. We live in a time period where pretty much everybody loves to share their lives online. We mostly share our successes, our significant milestones such as graduation, wedding, starting a family, buying a house, traveling, simply all the good things in life. But we are not always so willing to share the not so happy part of our lives, the daily struggles we tackle, the day-to-day reality, the time period when we simply don't feel really that happy about everything. So if we only share the positive things happening in our lives, it's really easy for other people who see your content online to assume that you're just really happy all the time and that you're truly living your best life. I am not trying to imply that it may not be true, but I've never met with anyone who would tell me I'm just really happy all the time and I don't ever have to deal with anything. Because when we are sharing just the bright side of everything, it can become very easy for other people to start comparing themselves to you, to doubt themselves and to question whether there's something wrong with them if they're not that happy all the time or seemingly that successful or that strong all the time as someone they see online. And as it often comes with comparison, we first start to question our abilities and where we're heading in life and what we've accomplished so far. And before we know it, we end up feeling so demotivated, believing we're just so behind in our life and everything. What leads us to think that we're behind in life? I think, number 1, it's the comparison. Not in vain they say that comparison is a thief of joy. If you want to feel bad about yourself, about your life, and about the way you're living your life, then comparing yourself to somebody else, especially to someone online, is a sure way how to get there. Irony aside, the reason why we feel so behind in our life, in our career, in our romantic life, in our recovery, or in pretty much any other aspect of our life, is the fact that we have a chance to compare our journey to somebody else's journey. If you think about it, if we wouldn't have anyone else to compare to, we wouldn't have that urge that we should already be hitting a level 38, for example, while we are still barely making it to the level 12, I love social media for many things, and I love that it gives a voice to people who unfortunately wouldn't probably be heard otherwise. But one of the things that I hate about social media is how much space it leaves us for comparison, and especially for comparison with strangers, with people we've never met with people we only know through the social media. Of course, it's inspiring at times to see people at your age or even younger than you being able to accomplish so many great things in life, but at the same time, we put ourselves under a lot of pressure because of that, because if they are able to accomplish those things, why aren't we? Another thing that I think leads us to feeling like we're falling behind is the pressure from society, from other people, and most importantly, the pressure from ourselves. To give you a perfect example of how much pressure we can put ourselves in, I often feel like I am behind in pretty much every aspect of my life, and I often find myself wondering why I am not already at this or this stage in my career and at this or this stage in my personal life. Why I am not already running my own business, why I'm not already married, why I don't already own my own place, etc. And the reason I do that is that I compare myself with someone else, and I completely overlook the fact that my starting point was most probably very different from the person I compare myself with. And not just the starting point, we are two different people and we lead totally different lives. I've just turned 28 and I feel like I'm just so behind in life. Do you hear how crazy and insane that is? I am just 28 and I already feel like a failure because I am not married and I don't have a baby and I don't own a house and my career sucks. And of course, seeing other people being the same age or younger being so successful and happy while I am still trying to figure out so many things in my life makes me put so much more pressure on myself, and that makes me feel like I am just so behind everyone. When I was at the early stage of my eating disorder recovery, I was following some people who struggled with binge eating disorder as well. And of course, their stories were encouraging and it did help me in some ways. But at the same time, I made that mistake that I started to compare myself and my journey with theirs. And of course, I always came out of it as a failure. I felt I wasn't progressing as fast in my recovery as they seemed to be. I felt like a failure if I binged because most of the people I followed said that from a certain point they have never binged again, and I couldn't seem to find that point. I was worried, why does it take me so much time to see any significant progress while everyone else seems to be doing so great? And you know what? I was, once again, completely overlooking the fact that we all have different starting points. And although we go through a similar issue, we are in a similar situation, we are two very different people with different backgrounds, different personalities, and we all have a very different pace in life. That's why I never say in this podcast, this is what I've done and this is what helped me and it's surely going to help you too, just do this or this or this. I always say that this is my journey and I share what has helped me, but also I'm very aware of the fact that we are all different people and we are at different stages of life, and what has worked for me may not work for you and vice versa. I often reproach myself for not starting this or that earlier. Why did I wait so long to change something? But again, I overlook what my life has been like for the past 10 years. I was struggling with an eating disorder severely from the age of 19 until I was like 24 or 25. So it was very difficult for me to focus on anything else when all I did was binging and hating myself and my body. I question why I haven't been able to build a successful career early on, but again, I was dealing with an eating disorder and I graduated college when I was 26 while working full time. I'm feeling behind because I'm not married yet. Again, overlooking the fact that my partner and I have just moved to a new city, we changed our jobs, and we started living a very different life, and some things just take time. I am not saying this as an excuse because I know that you can achieve amazing things if you put your mind to it, but I also think that we tend to forget that back in the day we did the best we could, and just because somewhere someone is doing quote unquote better, it doesn't mean that we're not doing enough or that we are behind in life. A few takeaway points that, in my opinion, are quite essential when it comes to really grounding yourself and realizing how far you've come on your journey, not comparing it to anybody else's journey, is that we all figure things out at our own pace. I often wish I had started doing certain things earlier. And I often feel like, what's the point of starting the thing now? It's too late, I'm too old, or whatever. Do I wish I had started my recovery journey earlier? Hell yeah, but I also know I did the best I could back then, and I'm grateful for actually starting the recovery journey. So why not embrace the fact that you've decided to make a positive change in your life instead of diminishing your success with the fact that it should have come earlier? Another takeaway point is to remember that we all have different starting points and we all move at a very different paces. Therefore, we shouldn't compare our journey with anybody else's. For example, if I take a look at my own life from my perspective and I say, so I was able to deal with the binge eating disorder that has been consuming my life for so long. And I moved to a very different city because it's something I wanted to do for a long time. And I made quite a progress when it comes to the relationship I have with myself as well as with my family. It sounds pretty good and it makes me feel really proud. But if I take what I have just said and I put it in the context of someone else's journey who may be super confident and having a successful career and is married with kids or whatever, there's a high chance I will end up feeling like a loser and frustrated with myself. Therefore, I believe it is important to remind ourselves as much as we can that our pace is our pace, and as long as we're moving forward, that's all that matters. The last takeaway is that it doesn't really matter when you start. What matters is that you do start. I've mentioned earlier that I often feel frustrated for not starting with some things earlier, like my career, saving money, etc. But hey, when you think about it, what will matter at the end of the day? The fact that you have started or when you have started? I think what matters is that you have started. To sum up this episode, I would like you to leave with a feeling that the only time you are ever really going to feel like you're behind in anything is when you will start comparing yourself with somebody else. We all move at a different pace, and just because someone may be progressing faster, it doesn't mean that your pace isn't enough. Life is not a race where you need to be better or faster than somebody else. Life is about being better than you were yesterday and hopefully being the best version of yourself that you want to be. So that's all I have for you today. If you enjoyed today's episode, feel free to share it with anyone who you think may find it helpful, and make sure to subscribe to the Binge on Selva podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or any other platform where you listen to podcasts. I'll be back next Tuesday with another episode. Until then, have a great rest of the week, take care, and talk to you soon. Bye!
You have to be your biggest fan. And when things are really tough and they're really rough and nothing's working, but there's something inside of you that says, I just have to follow that.